Okay, we're back, but let's see if we get a bunch of people to follow us to get on here.
We got to get them back.
All right. Okay, hi guys. All right, thanks for joining us for part 2. Okay, cool.
There's a lot more we could have talked about on the food forest.
There's so much, but we're trying to get you guys like just basics, fundamentals, introduce some of the plants. I think a lot of people get stuck on plant selection. Like, I don't know how many of you have been like buying plants from us recently or for a long time, or have seen our inventory of plants, which is on our website. It's very hard to tell like how big is this plant going to get, because they're all sold like, you know, kind of small.
Can I leave it in that pot?
Can I leave it in this pot? It's a very common question. We're like, no. So we like to break plants. Like, we've noticed it's very helpful for people when we break plants up into like food forest perennial category and then annual raised bed, annual and perennial. Because perennial, okay, annual means it just lasts one season. The plant was made by Mother Nature to make itself, reproduce itself via seeds very quickly, so in a matter of months. A perennial is a plant that lasts more than 1 year per annual. Okay, so a lot of those plants won't reproduce by seed. They'll reproduce by like rhizome or woody stem cutting or breaking them up into pieces like the lemongrass. And those plants we consider kind of permanent. So a food forest system, it's not permanent like all of those plants are going to live there. It's very dynamic, but it's much slower or like longer. You know what I mean? Like, basically, okay, if you have a raised bed, or if you're thinking about putting a raised bed in your garden, the really standard size for raised beds is 4 by 8 feet. Okay, that's 32 square feet of growing space. It's like, it's also full of like fluffy, new, very nutrient dense soil. If you're doing it, it's supposed to be, you know, on top of your native soil. It's like it's like the plants in there, they need to be babied. They're fast growing, they're delicate, they're small. And then the food forest plants are a little bit more rugged. You plant a mulberry and 3 years later it's really big. It's not watering, it's not watering itself, you know. It's like nature is watering it. Those plants are really established. Their root systems are going really far. So I feel like I should like divide all the plants on the website into categories, like put these in your raised bed. But a lot of them are, oh yeah, and a lot of them can go into both. But so now we want to talk about like growing in a raised bed, especially this time of year. There is stuff that you can plant in your raised bed now. So like Little River Co-op, we install raised beds for people as a service, and we're still doing it now. So it's just gonna, the plant selection is gonna look different than if we were doing it in September, October, or November. But honestly, every month it looks different. Like in October, which is when we start all of our heirloom tomatoes, we don't have lettuce in stock, you know. And then in November we have lettuce, and then in December we have spinach and pansies, and then in January we have, I don't know, like, you know what I'm saying? Every year through the winter it's different. So like, I mean month. So April is just another month, and May is just another month with different stuff to put in the raised bed. I'll say that there's other things you can do with your raised bed, which is what we're going to talk about in the third like chapter here. It's called cover cropping, but we wanted to talk about some raised bed appropriate, they're here.
Because
okay.
You have to garden, so.
Some raised bed appropriate plants. And also, these are much better in a pot. Because again, our standard kind of for, is this a good raised bed plant, is sort of like a hybrid of like, does it stay kind of small Does it need to be babied? And how long will it live in the system that you're planting it in? So, all right, Chris. Okay, so look, this is mustard. This is also mustard. You can put that down. You don't want to hold it up like that the whole time. So look, these are immature mustard plants. They're looking very nice right now, and they're looking very cute on the screen. These are both just different varieties. This is Mizuna. It's a serrated green variety. This is Dragon's Breath. I don't know. It's like a dragon's tongue. It's supposed to be really variegated on the insides of the leaf and the veins. But fun fact, purple colors hate the heat. So everything that's supposed to be like sort of vibrant and purple down here, it like gets greener. Mustard is in the Brassica family, and this is basically arugula. So for some reason, arugula got really popular as like the mustard that is acceptable to eat as a baby salad green, but they're all acceptable to eat as a baby salad green. There are like 30 different types of mustard, and that's actually one of the fun things about it, is there's like all these different colors, textures. Like Chris grows a red one. We have it in the nursery too, but I didn't grab one. It's called Ms. America, and it's like the deepest red one, and it's serrated. And one thing that's cool about mustard is you can eat the leaves at any stage. So like this is actually a more mature leaf than you'd find in one of Chris's salad mixes. It's like hand tall, but it'd be great like in a stir fry. And these plants also become monsters in your garden if you let them. Huge, beautiful monsters that just make you tons of food.
I think if you're planting these plants this time of year, it might be kind of nice to give them a little bit of shade. And by that I mean just like maybe there's one part of your garden has a coconut palm overhanging that makes some shade. And
or you can plant it near a plant that will make it shade.
Yeah, these
like an eggplant.
I mean, we're kind of getting at the end of the season for these guys. You can still definitely get some nice salad greens and cooking greens off of them, but they're not gonna thrive all summer long.
No, and also a lot of stuff, people will just naturally ask us, what can I plant for the summer? And one thing that we try to tell people is that, again, your garden is always changing, it's always evolving. Plants aren't supposed to last a really long time, most of them. Like, you'll plant a snap pea or a cucumber in the winter, and it is supposed to make you a bunch of food and then die, right? And then you're supposed to pull it out and plant something else. So something that you can plant now, it doesn't mean it's gonna take you through the summer or last forever. It just means like it's a natural thing to plant this time of year. It's gonna make you food, and then you're gonna take it out and you're gonna empty your garden, or you're gonna replace it with something else. Hot peppers are an amazing option for this time of year. I don't know the science behind it, but hot peppers love the heat. Okay, bell peppers hate it. Also, bell peppers are super susceptible to nematodes, which are a soil-borne ringworm that proliferate during the summer months when their biological activity is increased, aka they reproduce more. And hot peppers are I think it's because there's like the capsicum, right?
It's the species that these peppers are. They're a different. There's a handful of pepper species, and the ones that make hot peppers are just do better in our climate, hands down. I mean, bell peppers are grown in greenhouses in Holland.
Yeah, they are. Bell peppers are.
I mean, there is some bell pepper production in Florida, but for the most part, it's in the winter. Hot peppers, though, all year round.
Dude, Thai chili peppers are like my favorite plant. They get really bushy. They grow super fast. In like a month after you plant this beautiful pepper that I grew, it'll be covered in peppers. They all point up like a little Christmas tree, and they're really, really easy to grow. And then I've got a habanero here, and we have like 10 other varieties of hot pepper. Like if you're into hot, or even if you just want to grow something that makes you feel like you're a really good grower, even if you have to give away the peppers, at least it'll be like an experience that you guys can have. Okay,
moving
Garlic.
along.
Oh, you want to talk about garlic chives?
Oh, garlic chives. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we take care of people's gardens, we come and visit them, and like, there's just weeds, and it's just mayhem, and there's like one plant surviving, and it's garlic chives.
Their root systems are like
yeah.
Oh my god, it's crazy.
And you can do a lot of neat things with them. You have to be a little creative. But you can mince them up and put them on your potatoes, or you can.
You can make like dumpling, right? Like
Yeah,
make
yeah,
little
that's
Asian dumplingy things with
or
them.
yeah, or like what's the wheat cake or whatever. But
Yeah.
this is a great plant. If there's one onion family to grow in the summer, it's your garlic chives. It'll keep lasting. And then if it's in the way and when the winter comes along, you can just dig it up and move it and put it back in. And they're very strong plants.
It doesn't care. Move it.
Yeah. And then we got a tropical spinach here.
Oh yeah, sisu.
There's a lot of different tropical spinaches.
Here, look.
They all are a little mucilaginous.
That means slimy.
Yeah, so they're acquired taste. We're not going to say they're our favorite, but I mean,
this is actually my favorite weird spinach.
Yeah.
This one, sisu.
Sisu spinach, yeah. And so, you can eat it raw with some dressing or really light cooking.
Also, this plant in particular, I mean, so we have a lot of plants in the tropics that people call spinaches. And what they mean when they say that, they being plant people like us, what we mean when we call this sisu spinach, it doesn't mean that this is in the same plant family as spinach. What it means is, in another country, people eat this leaf like Americans eat spinach. And we think that that's really cool because spinach is really hard to grow in South Florida, and there are tons of other dark green leaves that are really, really good for you, full of they're really nutrient dense, and so this is one of them.
Yeah, and they definitely do have a lot of the same nutrients in them as traditional spinach, which I think is fun fact. There's actually a worm that really gets on your spinach plants. Also, that same caterpillar really likes this guy. Go figure, because they're getting the same nutrition. So that's interesting.
Also, so look, this is technically a tropical perennial plant. It can get really big, but if you're going to be harvesting it regularly, then it'll stay small enough to be like a cool guy in your raised bed. We also have Thai basil here. Thai basil and the other basils that are basically every basil but Genovese. So lemon basil, cinnamon basil. Chris has a Marihana. Didn't you bring a Marihana
No,
basil?
I put it back.
There's a basil called Marihana, which is like crazy tropical friendly. Tulsi, which is another basil medicinal one that is not Genovese.
Yeah.
Those are all really, really heat tolerant because they're crossed with a different basil family than Genovese is. And they're all amazing. They'll flower for you all summer. If you leave the flowers, then the bees will come and hang out on your flowers all summer, and they'll make you food for a really long time. These are actually perennial in the tropics, so you can have a Thai basil plant that lives for years, which is really cool.
You'll actually see Thai basil. There's a couple Thai basil commercial growers down in Homestead. It looks like it's beautiful. It's just these fields of purple flowers. You gotta know where they are, though.
Yeah, and also I mentioned African blue basil. We have that. This is a basil that doesn't make seeds, so you have to propagate it from cuttings.
That's a basil I think I'd put in the food forest, because
this is a food forest basil. It gets really big, but it's covered in flowers all year. Just bee explosion of bees on this plant.
Yeah, just bzzz.
It like vibrates with bees. Okay, another green thing that stays kind of small that's going to be a really good like lettuce, spinach, whatever substitute is amaranth. Okay, the whole amaranth is, most people know it as an ancient grain, but all amaranth plants also have edible leaves. And so again, in tons of countries, but not America, this is like a staple green crop. This amaranth and a bunch of other amaranths. So like Celosia is an amaranth variety that we grow for its beautiful flower, but it's also called Lagos spinach. and that leaf is edible. People eat it all the time. And then this one is kind of like the beautiful ornamental one that we really like to
What's
grow.
that, red garnet?
Red, yeah, it's called like, I think it's just called red garnet amaranth. But this will make you a bunch of leaves, and then it'll make seeds. And like Margaret's saying, then it'll make seeds and make amaranths all over your yard. But that's kind of cool. There's even a wild amaranth, like a weed here that you can eat. Yeah, this is callaloo. So callaloo is like is a interesting word. It can refer to the plant and the dish, and so the dish can be made with like almost any green.
Any stewed vegetable.
Yeah, it just means like
I've
stewed
seen okra
green.
called callaloo before.
It just means like stewed green leaf, and depending on what region you're in, or what even like what area of the Caribbean and stuff, it'll be made out of a different thing. But in general, this guy, yes, this is referred to as callaloo. Oh, and then we have an eggplant. Okay, eggplants get pretty big. Like I'd say they take up, what, like 3 square feet or more. They become like small shrubs, but the bonus is that the shrubs are covered in eggplants and that they like the summer. You'll have to battle some pests, which we can talk about, but in general, this guy will make you food, especially in the beginning of the summer. Like plant one now. This is like a 6-week-old plant, and you'll be harvesting eggplants like until something natural kills it off, maybe in like July or August. Oh, and you want to talk about Everglades?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so this is a tomato, kind of the only tomato variety that we grow here in the summer. The earlier you get this established, the better, as far as like now. It makes tiny little red cherry tomatoes that are pretty sweet. The plant is kind of prolific and grows all over the place and makes tons of fruit. The birds will love them. They'll like plant them all over your yard. What else about Everglades cherry tomato?
I like to tell people not to trellis them. You didn't say that right.
Yeah, they don't really want to be trellised. I mean, they branch like crazy, and
what I like to do is when I plant my Everglades, I'll prune some of the suckers off down at the base for a while so that I get like 2 or 3 strong leaders with like a nude, I guess, like first foot of growing. Like if you plant your Everglades on the edge of your raised bed, for example, or like in a corner, then it'll sprawl out. You can kind of train it to like sprawl out of your beds and like move around in your yard. This is also a good tomato for a food forest. It can almost act as like a ground cover because it's gonna go get really prolific, although like you will create a pest microclimate, which might be like not that fun, but that's like totally location dependent.
One thing I think is important to say about tomatoes, especially if you are going to throw this in your raised bed garden, don't put it wherever you're going to plan on planting tomatoes in the fall. That's one thing.
Oh yeah, you want to.
So a lot of times we tell everybody, put your tomatoes on the north side of your garden bed, the north side of your garden bed. For this summer planting, maybe put it on the south side. The sun's really high in the sky and the shade's not going to be important. Maybe this could provide some shade for your tropical spinaches or something like that. But don't plant, sort of think in the back of your head, well, the fall is going to be here before we know it. Like, and we're kind of going to talk about that a little bit later, because maybe you don't want to plant all this stuff because, you know, maybe you just want to get your garden ready for the fall planting. You want to talk about okra or no?
Yeah, you do it. You talk.
Okay, so yeah, another one is a summer plant is okra. This is growing. Actually, kind of one of the main cash crops we have down here in South Florida during the summer. Okra is a hibiscus. It has an edible flower that is yellow, which is interesting. You kind of need more than one plant to actually get an appreciable harvest. You'd probably want about 5 plants. And you have to make sure that you pick the okra when it's ready, because literally in the course of a couple days, the okra can go from tiny to perfect size to too much fiber and as much cooking as you want. Like, you're not going to get rid of that fiber. So you can kind of feel like the tip of the okra will feel just right, almost like it's going to snap off.
Usually we say thumb, like thumb size, right? I don't know.
It's a feel thing. It's like knowing when a peach is ripe. Maybe not that.
Okay, so look, if you want to start a raised bed this time of year, which a lot of people the feedback that we're getting, Little River Co-op, you know, as an edible plant nursery and garden installation company, is a lot of people want to start a new project now. So if you want to do that, we think that's a great idea. Your options for starting a raised bed now are plant it with some of this summer friendly, and then there's also summer tolerant like things. Start trying to eat a little bit of food, make some mistakes, you know, and then cover crop it, which we're gonna do a little demo of. But I want to talk about the making of a raised bed. Because I don't usually talk about that this time of year because people aren't really making raised beds now. They tend to wait for fall. But if you make it now and you cover crop it, then you're going to be able to do some really cool soil conditioning stuff before the fall, which is when you want to plant it with all of the annual veggies that you're really excited about. So what we do is we make our raised beds out of treated pine that's 10-inch boards, 10-inch deep boards. You don't need to make your raised bed deeper than 10 inches for the plants. And we see that done wrong a lot. Like people will be like, okay, I'm gonna, my husband made me a raised bed, it's 4 feet deep. And we're like,
well, where are we going to get all that soil?
We'll literally tell people to go home and take it apart.
Make 4 beds.
And make 4 beds out of it that are 1 foot deep. Because the plants, even if your raised bed is on like hardscaping, your plants don't need more than 10 inches of soil, especially annual winter vegetables, short-living things that don't get that mature. They don't need that much soil, period. Even if you're going to grow like a carrot, it doesn't get 4 feet deep. Also, you're going to encounter drainage issues if you do that. Nature,
yeah, I mean, the drainage issue is something really important to think about when you're building a really tall bed, or even a really deep container. If you don't have like soil that drains well, you're going to basically starve your plant's roots of oxygen. And that's why we want to have good drainage. And also, if you have a really deep bed, you might have drainage in your first year, but over time, all of that soil is going to settle and turn into muck. And then it's going to stop draining.
Also, you might think you have drainage because like the top 6 inches of your soil is drying out in between waterings, but you might have like completely anaerobic muck down at the bottom and you don't even realize it, and it's like coming up and causing like a lot of fungal issues in your root system.
Yeah, there's a lot going on under there, but you can screw it up real easily by having a deep bed. Just
right. So ours are 10 inches deep. We do 4 by 8 because that's a standard we did not invent. Gardeners have been using...
What kind of wood comes in that size?
Right, that's the reason. Wood comes in 8-inch lengths, and so if you cut one in half, you make a 4 by 8. So you need 3 boards, and your 2 boards are 8 feet. You cut one in half, they make the sides. Also, 4 feet is a really good width for being able to reach all the way into your garden without stepping into it. Because you don't want to step into your garden ever. So even if you want to make it, even if you have a ton of space and you don't want to make it 4 by 8, you should consider making it 4 by, fill in the blank, 4 by 30, 4 by 20, or you make 4 by 10 chunks with little pathways in between, something like that. If you make a giant square, which we sometimes see people do, like a 10 by 10 square.
Like a sandbox.
Then you're going to need to carve pathways through it so that you can walk through it, and then you're going to lose,
Which you
that
can
space.
do it. It's almost like a keyhole garden. So it's basically you have a square and then like one little entrance pathway just to maximize the amount of growing space you have, but still have some access to get in there. And also you'll have some airflow, which is something to consider.
So we, if you build a raised bed, one of the reasons why people build raised beds for annuals is so that they can add a bunch of fresh soil.
And it doesn't just erode.
Just dry, right. It doesn't just rain one day and like your whole garden that you made a mound of soil and planted in is gone. One of the reasons why you need to even add soil is because you're in South Florida. So if we were in like a valley in New York or whatever, there might...
Some sort of glacier carve.
Ooh. That sounds so
18
soily.
feet of valley bottom topsoil.
Yeah.
Nope, not here.
Nature has been making topsoil in that valley with like glaciers and rainfall and watersheds and all this stuff for a really long time. And if you live there, you get to just like remove a piece of grass and like stick a corn in and it's gonna grow. But you do not live there. You live in the tropics, and where you live used to be underwater.
Like
And
a rock sponge sticking out into the ocean.
we are a rock sponge, right? So if you've ever walked by a construction site that's doing like excavation work, it's just pure oolite, like an inch, 2 inches. A lot of backyards do have fill in them, and so you might have like a shovel's depth of like rocky, sandy, native soil there. But the plants don't want it. They don't want all that sand. So the easiest workaround is to build a frame, you know, like a container, and then fill the container with soil that you're bringing in from somewhere. A lot of people ask us about getting like good organic soil for their containers or their raised bed. There isn't really a source for good, organic, nutrient-rich, alive, dense, high organic content soil in Miami. So one of the reasons why is because we don't have animal agriculture here. So there aren't a bunch of farms that have piles of cow manure sitting around until farms need them and order truckloads of them. So that's a part of the system. What we do have, though, is we have a bunch of landscape companies, and we have a lot of tree debris. And so people make soil out of tree debris, and that's what we use. Basically,
Organic matter.
it's organic matter that is not compost. Also, the stuff that you can buy at Home Depot that says compost on it, like Black Cow or whatever, that is also not compost. In order to be considered compost, something has to eat the organic material, eat it, poop it out. Okay, the poop is compost.
It can be a bug.
It can be a bug.
Or a worm.
It can be a worm. It can be a millipede. Millipedes are great. Millipede castings. It can be a microbe. It can be...
Most of it's microbes.
Most of it is microbes. It can be a fungus. It can be a ruminant. A cow. It can be a chicken.
Say ruminant.
But when you buy bagged soil, even if it says compost, what it is it's organic material, tree branches, mulch, peat moss, whatever that region that company is working in has as an excess, chopped up a bunch, wet, chopped up a bunch again, wet again, chopped up again, chop, 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 comes into smaller and smaller pieces, starts to look more and more like soil. If you're buying bagged stuff that's like from another state, from Home Depot, for example, after they chop it up a bunch and pretend that it's compost, then they're going to pasteurize it, which means they're going to steam any and all life forms out of it while it's in its bag. Why are they going to do that? Because it's crossing state lines, which is smart. Like, they're thinking about bad things in the soil, pathogens, not healthy microbes, you know? And so, like, legally they have to pasteurize those bags, and then they show up at Home Depot like pasteurized, and they're not compost, nothing pooped them out. So if I'm not saying don't buy that stuff. We have our own soil blend. It's also not great. We've spent years figuring it out. We love it. What a soil that you're buying from the store to go into your new raised bed,
It's medium.
it's a medium. It's a filler. It is there to hold moisture and also drain. Hold and drain. Absorb moisture content, also good drainage. That's like the whole thing of new soil. Okay, so it's like you buy it, it's a filler. It's somewhere for your roots to be. It's somewhere to hold your organic granular fertilizer, which we're going to talk about too. And it's holds water, and then it also doesn't hold water to the point where it won't.
And eventually it will gain biology, but at first,
Well, yeah.
when you first start, it doesn't have it, and it doesn't have a lot of nutrition either. It's more or less shredded up.
Nutrient free. Shredded up, fillery stuff. Okay, and then you come in. You are now the tender of this soil. It's up to you to do certain things to activate the soil, to bring nutrients into the soil. That's one of the reasons why composting is so important. Sorry, we are like right under there. We're right by the airport.
We should just wait for this one to go by.
So composting at home is really, really important if you're gardening, because you're going to get a lot of nutrients out of that, and you're going to get a lot of biological activity out of that. But also, you have to add granular organic fertilizer to your garden bed. This is like the most important product, not this one. Granular organic fertilizer.
Most of them are made from chicken byproducts.
It's a lot of chicken. It's a lot of
poop
bones.
and feather meal.
It's a lot of animal byproduct. Poop, feather, bone, blood.
And there are vegan ones out there.
They're vegan.
Yeah.
Bat guano is a good one. There's a lot of ocean mineral products. Basically, what you need to do, like when people come to our garden center and buy a bunch of plants, we're like, please don't plant them without adding granular fertilizer. I think people think that organic gardening means like you don't add a thing that you buy in a plastic bag with a label. You know what I'm saying? People think, I think that this is like a chemical, and that organic gardening is so natural that you just put the plants in or something.
It can get there, but you're not there yet.
You're not there yet. You're not there yet. So, like, this is what we use in our plants, okay? So, during the season, when the world's distribution web is working properly, we sell like 5 or 6 varieties of fertilizer. We sold out of all of them. Now we sell this one. But that's not a bad thing. We love this one. This is actually the one that we use in our plants.
This is the one I use at the farm.
Chris uses this one at the farm. It's available locally. This is OMRI certified. OMRI is the organic certification body for garden materials. So it's like you go to the grocery store and you see like an organic label on a carrot, and that tells you that that farmer used very specific regulations to get a certificate to say that his stuff was grown in a specific way. So OMRI is
the
like
governing
governing board for our garden materials. You see, look, OMRI. There's a thing where gardening materials can say on them for organic gardening. What that means is that there is some poop in it, but they can also add whatever else they want to it. It has to be certified in order to be, like, we don't use any non-certified products. We wouldn't do that. The numbers on these guys, okay, those are crucial, but a lot of companies have done a bunch of homework already, and they know that home gardeners want to grow vegetables at home, and so they have figured out a really good nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus ratio for you. You can get really stuck in wormholes of soil amendments if you start Googling online. And we don't encourage that at first. We really think that just getting a blended by a company, organic, granular fertilizer is really key. Some of them, a lot of them actually nowadays also will have mycorrhizal inoculant in them. That's a good type of fungus that creates fungal networks in your soil and in your root system and promotes healthy soil microbiology. And this one has it in there too. And then sometimes they'll have like...
They got some micronutrients in there.
Yeah,
There's sulfur,
micronutrients.
iron, magnesium. These are all very important. Calcium, extremely important.
So important.
Yeah, so there's more than just the NP and the K.
Right, but this is crucial. So you have your store-bought, not amazing soil. You have your compost that you are making yourself at home, which is like this magic ingredient that's really important. And you have your granular organic fertilizer. in a perfect world, you would mix it all together like you're baking in your new garden. You can also top dress with this. And you can also use a foliar fertilizer, like a fish emulsion, which I didn't bring any over here, but it's a very stinky brown emulsion. And you mix it with water, and then you water your plants with it. And the cool thing about that is your plants can absorb that stuff through their leaves and their roots. They cannot use their leaves to absorb this. Super cool that they can use their leaves to absorb fish. Also, fish and kelp emulsion is a food source for your soil life. So you're not just feeding your plants, you're also feeding your soil.
You know what's fascinating about that?
What, Chris?
The plants are actually taking the nutrients that you're putting on their leaves, and they're taking them and they're passing them out through their roots as root exudates, and they're feeding microbial communities there in order to put those communities of microbes to work for them to find other nutrients in the soil. So it's really fascinating. Healthy plants can help build your soil.
Okay, so yeah, foliar water-based feeding, fish and kelp emulsion. You can get that online, OMRI certified, Neptune's Harvest. Granular organic fertilizer, balanced. You can get that also kind of anywhere. Just make sure it's OMRI certified. You can mix that into the soil. You can top dress with it. I see a lot of people saying like, oops, I didn't know. Is it too late? What you want to do is sprinkle it around the root ball of your plant. Plants have, well, whatever, it's such a small space. Put it in your whole garden. What's going to happen is when you water your garden from above or when it rains, the water is going to dissolve the granules, and then it's going to pull them down into the
They're going to have water soluble versions
it's water soluble, so that it'll like be dragged in. But the best thing to do is to mix it into the soil when you're planting, and then also like put a handful of it in the hole when you plant.
Yeah, I've noticed if you have too much fertilizer right at the top layer,
oh yeah,
then
the
all of your roots are right at the top layer, and that can be challenging like in the summer because the top layer could dry out, and the plant has put all its investment right at that top layer. And so anyway,
yeah,
sometimes it's nicer to get that fertilizer a little deep.
Speaking of the top layer, when you plant now, oops, okay, so I want to start a new video, but we'll finish this first. One of the other things I want to mention about gardening in a raised bed now is that you should be adding some sort of cover to your nude soil. And we like straw, right? Not hay, straw.
Yeah.
Hay.
Straw.
Sorry, I always forget. One has seeds, one doesn't. The straw that we use is called coastal, but basically, okay, in nature, soil is never bare. Okay, if soil doesn't have a plant growing on it, nature will either grow a plant on it for you, that's like weeds, or nature will drop stuff on it. So like, for example, in a forest, the soil isn't like right there. It's covered with like a thick layer of like detritus, rotting stuff. I know. Like
lichens,
rotting leaves, lichens. Sorry guys, we got a low power mode. All right, but we brought extra phones. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, okay, so soil is never bare. You need to cover it with something because nature will cover it with something for you, but also in the summer, think about it, soil is black, it's moist, and it's under this crazy hot sun. It gets dried out really quickly, you know, like that top layer gets really, really dry. So a lot of people find it challenging to keep their plants hydrated in the summer. Even if there's new moisture like down low, that top layer needs to be kept moist. And you want to like also, you can make this really cool like fungal and biological network happen. It's almost like the straw is like a cap or like an umbrella. I don't know, like
it's going back to the mulching thing. I mean, it's breaking down to make nutrients in the nature. Yeah. It's adding soil life. It's giving the fauna in the soil, like the bugs and stuff, like some habitat, some stuff to eat. I mean, it just goes on, and it's keeping the rain from destroying the soil when it comes down. Because you know how the rain comes down here. I mean, it just blasts it, and the sun comes back out, and you look at your garden, and it's like there's just sand. Like it's all that's left
Yeah,
behind because
after a strong
all the
rain.
good stuff is getting washed out. And
Someone asked if you can use mulch. Tell them why no.
mulch.
Well, we don't like to use mulch in raised bed systems.
Yeah, you can. I think we don't like it because a lot of the wood chips just take too long to break down. And while mulch is really good in other sort of garden sort of settings, we don't really like the wood chips in the garden just because they take so long. And then when you go to turn the garden over or to sort of replant, a lot of that mulch will get mixed in with the soil, and really woody material mixed in with soil will actually bind up nitrogen. So to kind of get into the weeds there a little bit, that's why we don't like to use wood chips so much in the garden bed. But you can. It's not the end of the world. You can move them aside.
But I love
really
how with hay, it creates it's like it almost felts itself, you know, because it's like it's felted in the bale kind of, and so you just pull it apart a little bit around your plants, and then when you need it out of the way, you literally like take a finger and you just drag it through your raised bed, and it all comes off, and you can either put it in the compost or you can mess with your soil, plant stuff, and then just put the hay all right back on your garden bed.
You can use leaves too, but often that creates sort of kind of too many snails, often like leaves.
Straw.
And
straw.
what?
Someone was like, not hay. Yes, I'm sorry, I always forget. It's straw.
Yeah. Well, it's coastal. It's actually
It's
neither.
coastal. Yeah, it's grass. It's actually just a coastal grass. Okay, look, we're running out of phone juice, so we're gonna switch phones, and then we're gonna do our third and last section where we're gonna talk about cover cropping and composting and mulch, which is like super duper duper important. Cover cropping, it's like you should definitely. So basically, we're just gonna switch phones and then start a whole new live video, and you can just rejoin.